A podcast not seen since the age of legends. This is the One Power Podcast. Welcome back, everybody. Episode 3. Talking about some great stuff tonight. Definitely excited. As usual, I'm Greg.
And I'm Thorne.
And tonight we will be talking about chapters 2 and 3 of Eye of the World. Thorne is laughing at my mess up there, but it's okay. I'm going to own it. Thorne, I'm excited to be back. You excited?
I'm always excited.
She's stifling laughter right now because she's the one between the two of us that always messes up. So when I mess up, it is just deathly hilarious. Like she loves it. It's just like, see what you get. So she's over there snickering, and I'm over here trying to recover. So in any case, but I actually want to start the episode tonight with a couple of quick things. First thing, and actually, Thorne, I didn't tell you I was going to do this because I just thought of it. We ran the numbers, and according to what we've been told, episode 1 had, what was it? Was it 85 downloads so far, Thorne?
85, yes.
85 downloads. That's awesome, guys. And that is just at the time of this recording, and the episode has not been out for a week. So we're hoping by the time this coming Friday rolls around, we'll be at 100. But we definitely appreciate all the love and the feedback and the support we've gotten from everyone. And I do want to say that though we missed the Twitter of Time segment on the last episode, we are coming back to it this episode, and that is a promise. Our content is not going to get away from us tonight. We've got too much else to
notes.
do. We have notes. Don't worry. We're prepared. So with that being said, I do have a slight teaser. At the end of the episode, we are going to have our first, hopefully of many, special announcement for the podcast. We have a very, very exciting, bit of exciting news to share at the end of the episode. So be sure to tune in. Of course, you could always fast forward and try to find it, but, then you miss out on all the antics we get into in the middle of the episode. So please listen to the whole episode, and then you'll get the good stuff at the end. But we are discussing episodes 2 and 3 tonight. Episode is Strangers and the Peddler, because that's literally the two names of the chapters. So Thorne, can just anybody listen to this episode, or do we need to have a little bit of restriction here?
Okay, if you have not read and finished chapter 3, I do not suggest you listening to us. But if you finished up to at least episode 3, we will keep spoilers to an absolute minimum.
Yes, and we try not to divulge too many spoilers, or any spoilers really, beyond the limit of where we're at in the books, except for, of course, our special episodes, which we will, of course, give you guys plenty of warning that we will be discussing spoilers from either all or certain parts of the series. So, but Thorne, I think you're up to start. So chapters 2 and 3. So we went over the prologue in chapter 1 last week. We were a little ambitious.
Yeah, I think our mistake last week was that we just tried to do it. We just had the books in front of us, and we're trying to just kind of make a synopsis as we ran. This week, I actually wrote a synopsis. Greg
she's throwing shade at me because I pulled a synopsis from a website. I'm going to paraphrase it. So I'm making it my own, but she's very proud that she wrote a synopsis. So if you're listening, give her a hand because she wrote her own synopsis. I didn't have that kind of time. So, but yes, we discussed it, and we think that maybe it'd be a little bit better for us if when we talk about these chapters, instead of walking through every paragraph and trying to point out every detail and everything like that we kind of did last episode, we're going to kind of just hit on the chapter, tell you which chapter we're talking about, give a synopsis at the front end, and then each one of us, we're going to try to do two chapters a week. Each one of us is going to, direct the discussion toward things that stood out to us in that chapter, things that we like, things that we dislike, things that happen that stick with us after reading that. So instead of walking through the whole chapter, we're just basically going to do a synopsis and then hit our favorite highlights, so to speak.
Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate to me. Okay.
So, Thorne, you're first up.
Yes, I have got chapter 2, Strangers. Uh, so at the beginning of this chapter, Rand and Matt go inside the Wine Spring Inn and see the entire village council gathered there, and that takes Rand by surprise. The atmosphere is clearly strained because all the men are sitting silently yet impatiently. Like, nobody's talking, nobody's playing games, no one's reading books, everybody's just sitting there. Master Luhan, the blacksmith, stares at them for a bit, and Matt kicks Rand and rushes him through. Before Matt can tell Rand why Master Luhan is mad at him, Mr. Salvier comes by and offers them food, specifically honey cakes, because apparently Mr. Salvier is the best cook in Emmons Field, and anybody wants to eat at her table. Rand tells Matt that they can eat after they're done, because in chapter 1, at the end of chapter 1, Matt decides to help Rand unload the casks from the cart. Sorry, a little bit of going backwards there.
Right.
Matt explains that Master Luhan is angry at him because he told some village boys that farmers had seen ghost hounds that breathe fire running through the woods to scare them. Matt, of course, took it a step further and put flour on Master Luhan's dogs and let them loose near one of the boys' house. Of course, the dogs ran straight back to the Luhan's house and covered the entire house in flour. Apparently, Mistress Luhan was so angry that she chased Master Luhan and the dogs out of the house. Rand states that Mistress Luhan is scarier than her husband because she's nearly as strong as the blacksmith, but has a bad temper. By the way, Master Luhan is the blacksmith of the village, as well as part of the village council.
He's huge. He's a big fella.
Big man.
Big man.
When they get back to the common room, the village council is in a tight knot and seem to be discussing serious things. The boys continue to do the work, and they come back to find that Mr. Salvier has left them honey cakes and mulled cider near the tops of the stairs. So, super nice lady. Anybody says anything mean about Mr. Salvier, and I will fight them. And they end up eating and drinking while unloading the rest of the cart. As they're finishing and getting ready to see the Gleeman, Ewan Fingar, a young village boy, comes running in, announcing that there are strangers in the village, which of course they assume must be the Black-Cloaked Rider. Ewan states that the strangers are a man and a woman. He says the man's cloak changes colors and that the woman has a super fancy blue clothes. He says the woman must be a high-born lady, like in the stories. Her name is Moraine and the man's name is Lan. Ewan states that the wisdom, Nynaeve, dislikes her because Moraine called her child. I wrote here, note, a wisdom is similar to a medicine woman. Moraine asked her about the people of Emmons Field about herbs and remedies. Rand states that Nynaeve has a bad temper anyways and that she never stays angry for long. Sorry, catching my breath.
She's not used to talking this much for this long.
Yes, I usually just put in my little notes instead of just talking. They get back on the topic of the Gleeman, and Ewan questions whether Matt is telling the truth. The village council is still talking when the boys make their way out of the inn. When they exit, Bella and the cart are gone to the stable. Matt tries to tell Ewan that he's not lying. Rand gets an itchy feeling like he's being watched. He looks around and notices a raven staring at him. Just as he's getting angry, Matt states that he's tired of being stared at. The two boys grab rocks and throw them at the raven, but it steps aside. That freaks them out. A woman appears, and at that time, the raven flies away in a hurry. Rand cannot tell the age of the woman and assumes that she's the Lady Moraine. She holds herself with an air of grace and command. Rand and Matt say good morning to her, and she's happy that they know her name. Ewan tells her that he had told them because he overheard Lan say it. That is a mouthful.
She's doing good, everybody. She's doing a great job.
But he heard Lan say it, but stresses that he wasn't eavesdropping. Moraine insists on not being called Lady Moraine. She requests the boys She requests that the boys do some work for her later and gives each of them a coin when they agree. Rand asks what she's doing in the village, and she says that she collects old stories. The boys claim that nothing ever happens in the Two Rivers. As she leaves, a tall man that went unnoticed before follows her. He has long hair and wears a leather headband. Rand thinks that he moves like a wolf. Ewan tells him that the man is Lan and says, I'll bet he's a warder, which Matt says is silly because warders are just made up stories and that warders have swords and armor covered in jewels and are always fighting Trollocs in the Great Blight. Ewan insists and Matt states that there are no Trollocs in the Two Rivers, only sheep. I just thought that was funny, so I had to include it. Ewan realizes that the coins Moraine gave them were silver pennies and excitedly thinks of what he can buy when the peddler comes. Rand and Matt are suspicious of what kind of chores that she was going to ask them to do. Rand and Matt agree that they're not going to spend their coins, and Ewan is torn. Rand distracts him by mentioning the Gleeman again, and Ewan is still questioning whether they are lying. The peddler's wagon appears. Whew, I'm out of breath.
I'm proud of you. That's the most, like I said, that is the most you've spoken on this podcast so far, as far as consecutive, well, at this point, minutes. So, good job. Great. That was a good synopsis.
Yeah.
So what stuck out to you just kind of immediately in rereading through this chapter and all of that? And I think everyone just heard my Xbox go off.
I did.
Anyway. So what stuck out to you?
I don't know. This chapter is a lot of getting to know the village and getting to know the people. Mm-hmm. Not much interesting happens until the Lady Moraine appears. She's kind of suspicious if you think about it. I mean,
she's definitely out of place.
She just gave 3 boys silver, which I think it stated that the amount of silver that she gave them was enough to buy a good horse.
So if we're kind of putting that in like modern day terms, it's like giving a kid that's never been given more than $20 at any time in his life, giving him like $200 or $300 at least, if not more, probably a little more.
Oh no, I would say like I think a better comparison would be like if you were given the money to buy a new car.
So in other words, it's like, hey, I want you to do something for me, and they put a check in your hand, and you can go buy a pretty decent car with it, which is still a lot of money.
It's a ton of money.
It's a ton of money. Absolutely a ton of money.
It's a ridiculous amount of money for somebody to be paying you just to do some work. I mean, unless you're like a doctor or something.
Or, a mobster, drug dealer.
Good point.
Other ne'er-do-well professions. It's like, hey, I get you to do something for me, and you're vastly overpaid, and then you realize after you look back that all the things you did were really bad, but they didn't tell you so you would do it, and they paid you way too much.
Yeah, and I think that it's also interesting the Raven and just staring at them and acting like a raven shouldn't. I think that's pretty interesting.
Well, the thing I liked about the Raven, I think, is, it really, truthfully, the whole interaction with the Raven kind of helped you understand the world a little bit better because of how they view ravens.
Yeah, there's definitely negative connotations toward them.
I mean, they believe they serve the Dark One. And seeing a raven is
that I don't think that's actually stated in this.
Is it stated? I thought it was stated.
I think I would have wrote that down if it was stated explicitly.
Well, I do know that Rand calls it a filthy carrion eater.
Yes, the filthy carrion eater is a phrase that was said.
I'm looking back through it real quick. But needless to say, I mean, let's see. They don't like the ravens. And really and truthfully,
Yeah.
I guess I went ahead and made that assumption, not because I've read the books, but because kind of already you get this sense of anything bad is not, maybe not everything, but a lot of things that are bad or looked sideways at are kind of associated with the Dark One. You know, they
Yeah.
kind of, so it's almost like guilt by association. Even if he didn't come out and say you serve the Dark One by him calling it a filthy carrion eater, I guess it's more of a look in the mindset of the Emmons Fielders and the people in this world as, you know, these bad things could be signs of the Dark One, related to the Dark One. You could call it superstition or whatever you'd like to call it, but it's still there and it's kind of ingrained in the world. But that was interesting the first time I read that, you know, because I draw, especially in this book, I draw a lot of parallels to other fantasy works. I definitely draw parallels to Lord of the Rings, and there's a whole thing in the Fellowship of the Ring where they're traveling and they would have to, like, this flock of basically ravens would fly over them, but they were spies for the enemy, for Sauron and Saruman and the other bad guys in the movie, in the book too. So whenever they would fly overhead, they would have to hide. They have to hide behind rocks and underbrush. They wouldn't let them see them because they were spies and they were going to go back to their master and tell them, hey, you know, they're over here, they're doing this, send soldiers over here and do that. So the first time I saw the Raven and Rand acted that way, that's kind of what popped in my head. And that, and the fact that just in and of itself, I felt like it was it was just very telling that they reacted that way to just really nowadays what we would just look around and just say, oh, it's just a bird.
Yeah.
It's almost like an omen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, small town in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
They probably have some superstitions.
Well, and I'll say this too. You know, especially in Eye of the World, but you know, you never stop meeting characters in this series. I think I read the figure. I don't remember the exact figure, but there's over 2,000 named characters in this whole series.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and what was so funny is, like I said on the last episode, my wife has started reading Wheel of Time, and she's I think around halfway through Eye of the World, and she was reading it out loud to me, and she'd go to pronounce a name, and there would be names that she was trying to pronounce, and she'd look over at me, and I'd tell her I don't know how to pronounce it because I don't even remember that name because there's so many named characters. I forget.
Good point.
I forget so many of them. I mean, she would read this name. She'd be like, "Is that how you say it?" I'm like, "I don't know. They're not really a main character. I don't really know."
You're like, I've only read the books once.
Yeah, but if you think about it, though, I mean, I have a hunch. I'm not going to make a bold declaration because I can definitely be proven wrong on this. But I have a hunch that there's nobody out there that can, off the top of their head, name all 2,000 plus characters.
Oh yeah, I doubt. Big doubt.
I mean, I think even Sarah Nakamura, who says she's read the series 30 plus times.
Yeah.
I would be surprised. I'm not saying she can't, but I would be surprised if she named. I'd be honest. I'd be surprised if she named 500 of them because I can't name 500 of them. But she's read it 30 times, so she's definitely got way more on me than I've got. But you know, you remember the main characters because they follow from book to book to book, and then things happen, and then you remember characters associated with big events. But then it's just like Robert Jordan didn't believe in, you know, to use gaming language, it's like he didn't believe in NPCs. You know, he didn't believe in just a no-named runner boy. It's like he names just about every character in these books that's ever seen, except for the ones that you see from afar. Like, well, I can't really go into that because it's a slight spoiler. But basically, you know, there's a crowd of people over there, and they don't talk.
Yeah.
They don't have dialogue. It's like if they have any dialogue or come up right next to one of the main characters and do anything around the main characters, they're getting a name. Because there's a lot of characters.
Pretty much.
Yeah, there's a lot of characters in Wheel of Time that they get like 1-2 mentions tops, and then they're gone. And there's some that was like they get mentioned early in the series and they show back up late in the series, and you're like, who is this? Oh, they were in book 3 and now they're back in book 10. what? you know, so
Yeah,
it's just like, where did you come from? So Thorne, is there anything else about this chapter that kind of stands out to you at all?
I don't really have anything else.
I mean, to be fair, it's kind of, this is always the thing I advise people on, is the first few chapters of Eye of the World, barring the prologue and like the very beginning of the first chapter with Rand and Tam on the road and seeing the Blackcloak Rider. It's not dull, it's interesting, but it's kind of uneventful because it's mostly just meeting people and setting a stage. So that's kind of the
Yeah.
part of the book we're in. But I told my wife this. I told her, especially if there's anybody listening that's a fan of more immersive video games like Skyrim and The Witcher and things like that, where it's just this massive world, when you read The Wheel of Time, you've got to have that mindset of, I need to let myself be immersed. Because if you don't,
Yeah.
then these chapters, you won't read past them because you won't already have this mindset of, this is setting things up for later. Because Robert Jordan is not an arbitrary writer. I don't think there's anything, to my mind, and someone can definitely point something out, but I don't think there's anything to my mind that he didn't tie up by the end of the books, and he didn't include, or that I don't think he included anything that ended up not mattering.
Yeah.
Basically, is what I'm saying. He didn't just throw, because even the random characters, they were there to serve a purpose. And even if they didn't get some glorious, end of their story, they were there for the, end of the other's story or another event. And they were crucial to that in their own way by filling out the world. So Robert Jordan has not put anything in these books, I think, that's just completely and totally throwaway.
Yeah. He doesn't. He likes to have his tie-ins and his. He had a very well planned story.
Right. And all stories have to start somewhere. And they can't, because I was like, I think I said this in the last episode. We got a pretty good hook in the beginning with this really mysterious and kind of weirdly epic prologue, where it's just there's just these dudes that have been in epic struggle against each other, all this stuff happening, and then we even get a pretty good hook in the first chapter with the encounter on the road with the Althors and the Black Rider. But then you get to the next chapter, which is Strangers, and the most exciting thing is you meet two out of towners.
Yeah, there's not much excitement happening in my chapter.
To be fair, guys, we're going to do this on the episode. I can't remember. I don't think we did it on the episode last week, but we actually roll dice to determine who's going to get what in the next episode. So, just to kind of clear that any air, I didn't just take the more interesting of the two and say, I want that one. We rolled for it, and whoever won got their pick. And, well, Thorne, you picked chapter
I
2.
picked
So.
Strangers.
But
I wanted to introduce Moraine.
And that's a good reason, because, to be honest with you, that was my thought, was I kind of want Strangers because I want to talk about Moraine. But, at the same time, though, these early chapters, there's only so much we can talk about without getting too far ahead of ourselves. But I want to go back on something you said just a minute ago, Thorne, about Moraine, and we were making some jokes about it. But I kind of want to go back to that, because that is the most significant thing that does happen in chapter 2, is the introduction of Lan and Moraine, who we know nothing about. We just know that Moraine is pretty, but it's like Rand can't get a read on how old she is. And Lan is this really tall dude that seems to blend in with everything. So it's not just a fact of they're dressed differently, is they look and act
and
different.
Also, Rand describes Lan as he looks like a wolf.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not his physical features that he's talking about. It's the way that he moves.
Right. It's because a lot of times when you see these types of characters paired up, and that terminology I'm using right there, that phrasing I'm using right there is going to make more sense the later we get into the book. But when you have a character like Lan, usually most of the time you're describing their appearance. Or he looks like a wolf. He kind of leers. He's whatever. But Rand is very specific in that he notices that he moves like a wolf, and that's actually very telling. Not just to what type of person he may or may not be, but also what he's potentially capable of.
Yes, exactly.
But I think the most mysterious out of the two is definitely Moraine, because she's the one that's having conversations with these boys. Even though, Rand and Perrin and Matt are in their early 20s, they're still considered boys. They're just now considered men. Actually, that's going to come out in this next chapter a little bit. But they, they still kind of act like it. I mean, Matt's a 20-something-year-old. He's a college kid. He's catching badgers and turning them across the green and letting them chase girls, and then he's powdering dogs to make them look like ghost dogs and letting them, run back to the Luhans, which I'm sorry, to me is one of Matt's best kind of more prank-ish moments. Is this early in the series? Yeah. It tells you everything you need to know about Matt. It really does.
Yeah, Matt gets introduced really well. I mean, the first thing that he says to Rand is that he and another one of their friends had caught a badger, and that they wanted to let it loose on the green to watch the girls run.
And see, but I guess in my mind that is like a teenager thing to do. Like, we're talking like, can't quite drive yet. My mom just dropped me off at the skate park. I just caught a squirrel. Let's see what we can do with it type of teenager. But here's Matt, who is an adult. He's a young adult, but he's an adult. And he's
old enough to get married.
Right. And he's dodging responsibility. He's playing pranks with animals because, duh, they live out in the middle of the woods. So why would you not play pranks with animals? He's a very just, you get a sense of him being carefree because he doesn't want to do anything worth caring about.
Yeah.
But after analyzing that a little bit there for a second, if you don't have any other observations, Thorne, I guess we can move on to chapter 3 if you're ready.
It's your turn to talk a lot.
It's my turn to talk a lot. I don't ever need a turn to talk a lot. Okay.
Your favorite time.
Just to talk. My favorite time. All right. I don't know if you can hear it, but I am popping bones in my body. Okay.
I can hear them. They sound painful.
If you're grossed out by that, sorry. That was just fingers.
I had to pop my fingers because I heard you popping yours.
That's like a sneeze. It's contagious.
Yes, it's very
or
contagious.
A yawn, actually.
Yawns are not contagious for me.
Everyone, she keeps getting weirder and weirder, and it happens on the podcast. These things do not come out in our pre and post episode conversations or while we talk on Discord during the week. It always shows up while we're recording. It's like you play everything close to the chest, Thorne.
Except for like the times that we talk about like books and shows that I don't like or don't read.
I swear we're going to have a whole episode where it's like, here's the things that Thorne loves Wheel of Time. She knows a lot of junk about Wheel of Time. Here's all the things Thorne has never seen or read, and it's going to be a very long list.
It'll be a very long list,
but that's okay. To each their own. So, Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is the Peddler. So, the Peddler's wagon's coming across the bridge. Of course, everyone's running out to meet the Peddler, gathering around, because the Peddler is kind of what he sounds like. He sells stuff, but he also brings news. So he's kind of like almost like a traveling merchant, almost. But I wouldn't put them in the same category as a merchant. We can unpack that a little more later. I just guess I need to get to the synopsis. But the Peddler stops in front of the inn. Of course, a lot of people are already at the inn. So people are constantly coming in, joining the crowd. They're watching the Peddler, who's introduced as Pot and Fane. And they say this guy's always smiling and laughing like he's got a joke on his mind or that he's just heard or he knows something funny to tell. He's described as this really wiry guy with a huge nose, like a beak of a nose. So I'm getting a very goofy picture of this dude. But everyone's gathered, and the village council comes out, and they want to hear the news as well. We're introduced to Perrin, Perrin Ibarra, who is described as someone who's almost as big as Master Luhan. He's about half a head shorter than Rand, and because Rand's really tall. If you guys haven't picked up on it, Rand's a tall dude. And so Perrin kind of links in with Matt and Rand, and they're kind of chit-chatting about everything happening. They're excited about the Gleeman that's apparently staying in the inn that nobody has seen yet. So they're getting excited. So the peddler starts talking, and he starts telling everyone that there's a war going on in Gildan, which if you look at the map in the books, it's, I think, kind of southeast of the Two Rivers area. And that's coming off the top of my head. I'm not looking at a map, so I could be wrong. But there's a war going on in Gildan, and that people are flocking around a guy who's calling himself the Dragon. So when he brings this comment out, everybody starts, freaking out, gasping, and starts shouting that it's got to be a false dragon. Now, we're not giving any context to who this dragon fellow is at this point. But Fane comes back and says that they can't be sure if he's the Dragon Reborn or just a false dragon. But this guy in particular can actually channel the one power, and that a bunch of Aes Sedai have ridden south from Tar Valon to deal with it, to deal with him. And again, right at this point in the book, I just want to do a side note here real quick while I'm reading this synopsis. The reason why I'm not stopping and explaining a lot of this is because the book hasn't. So I don't want to spoil anything, get ahead of the book. So these Aes Sedai is this group of people, which Matt has alluded to, that they have power. There's been a little bit of talk of Aes Sedai, but basically this group of women has ridden down from Tar Valon to deal with this man who can channel the one power. So the village council brings the peddler into the inn. They get rattled, and they grab the peddler, and they say, we need to talk to you about everything going on. And people start saying, hey, we want to hear it too. And they're like, and basically Bran Alvear shuts everyone down and says, nope, village council's going to talk to him first. And then when we let go of him, you all can ask him whatever you want. Matt, Perrin, and Rand start talking about everything they've heard. They start talking about the dragon and the Aes Sedai. Matt tells the others that Billy Conger actually named the Dark One last year when Nynaeve, about the time Nynaeve shows up. And Nynaeve is introduced. We've heard about Nynaeve so far. We've heard that she is the village wisdom, which she, when Thorne, kind of described earlier, as kind of like a medicine woman, kind of like a wise woman, medicine woman, she's a leader of the women's circle. So she's introduced. She's a younger girl. She's older than the boys, but she's still a young girl. But
she's supposed to be about 23 or 24, so a few years older than them.
But Matt's in the middle of telling everyone that this person named Billy Conger named the Dark One last year, and then Nynaeve shows up and to them, and then tells Matt that he shouldn't be off his mother's apron strings, which is basically a way of saying you're talking nonsense, you're being crazy. About that time,
you're acting like a child.
Right, exactly. About that time, something else happens that's been hinted at for the past several chapters. Rand suddenly notices Egwene standing behind the wisdom, behind Nynaeve, just kind of watching everyone. So, we meet Egwene also in this chapter. We meet a lot of people in this chapter, as a matter of fact. And while they're, she's standing behind Nynaeve, and they're talking to Nynaeve, and Rand tells Nynaeve everything that the peddler said, and she kind of gets flustered, and she takes off to go get the women's circle to see if they can find out anything useful, is basically what her stated purpose was.
I thought she ran into the inn.
The synopsis I got here says she quickly leaves to get the women's circle to find out anything useful.
Hold on. I've got to double check that, because I'm pretty sure that the women's circle doesn't come into this conversation. The mayor and the village council take Pod on Fane into the inn, and let's see.
Nope. It says it right here. I found it. It says, Nynaeve shook her head. So that's why the peddler's wagon stands abandoned. I heard people rushing out to meet it, but I couldn't leave Mistress Alien till her fever broke. The council is questioning the peddler about what's happening in Gildon, are they? If I know them, they're asking all the wrong questions and none of the right ones. It will take the women's circle to find out anything useful. Setting her cloak firmly on her shoulders, she disappeared into the inn. It's a mix. She goes to talk to the village council, but when she leaves, she's talking about how it's going to take the women's circle to get down to business. Is basically what she's saying. So it's kind of both.
But she doesn't ever go get the. She doesn't go to get the women's circle. She just goes in as a representative of the women's circle.
So after being corrected, on that note, back into my synopsis. So, which is fine. It's kind of a technicality, but if it's wrong, it's wrong. So Egwene starts having a conversation with Rand, and she tells him that she wants to become a wisdom. Rand's not a fan. He's kind of like, are you sure? He's not really very enthused about that. But then Matt intervenes or interrupts, and he states that Perrin also got a coin from Moraine, and that Perrin has also seen the Black Cloaked Rider. So there's another guy that's both been given a coin and seen the Black Cloaked Rider. Now, Perrin says that Master Luhan didn't quite believe him when it came to seeing the rider, but he carried his biggest hammer with him the same day. So while Luhan says, I don't really buy it, kid, he still grabbed his biggest hammer and carried it around. So it kind of told you what he was really thinking. And then when Egwene asks what they talk about, Matt and Perrin starts talking about their encounters with Black Cloak Rider with her. And then Egwene thinks it's all silly and that they go around spreading tales, scaring the kids. That's what she thinks this is, because she's been hanging out with Nynaeve, so she's thinking, okay, there's nothing these boys are going to be saying that's worth anything.
Note who's with them.
Well,
Matcham Cobb.
Yeah, I know Matt is, but you also got Perrin and Rand, and they're all collaborating on the same story. So, but she's still relegating it to you're all telling stuff and seeing things.
I think it's mentioned that a lot of the time the other boys get in trouble whenever Matt's involved.
I mean, that's fair. That's really fair. But in any case, Egwene's not buying it. So she's on the verge of saying something else to them about all this when the door to the inn opens and the Gleeman actually appears. So that's where that chapter ends, is with the Gleeman making his entrance. So the previous chapter ended with the Peddler making his entrance, and now the Gleeman's made his entrance, and we will talk about that next week. Things that I pulled out of this chapter. So first of all, Pot and Fame. Okay, so I kind of described him a little bit. Wiry dude, beak of a nose, so he's an odd-looking fella. I mean, he's just real odd. But the book makes a point of telling you how he's different from other peddlers, and he's different when it comes to the news. So the book states that most peddlers kind of fall into one or two types of people. Either the type of people that they just kind of nonchalantly say, yeah, I hear there's some stuff going on in Gildon, don't really know much, but it is what it is, and you always hear rumors of wars and things like that. Or another group, which will barely tell you anything at all, that you basically have to pull their teeth out to try to get them to tell you anything. It's like pulling teeth. But according to what we're told, and of course what we witness with how he presents the information, Pot and Fane is almost like a wannabe Gleeman. Because he's...
Yeah, he
Go ahead.
He pretty much preens under the attention.
Oh, for sure. He hops up on the top of his, the front of his wagon, and he's tall, or the back of the wagon, and he's just talking to everyone. And I just have this vision of this like scrawny, odd-looking fella just being super dramatic. In fact, there's a point where you can tell that this is his goal, because Perrin and Perrin and Rand. Well, that's actually the three of them. They're all talking, and Rand's trying to say, "Hey, we'll talk about this later. Leave it for later." And but the crowd gets quiet as Pot and Fane is like getting ready to tell everything, but everyone hears Rand say that last bit. So
just later,
yeah, he's just like later, and like there's you've had that happen before probably. It's like you're in a loud like area or room where there's like a lot of noise, so you raise your voice, but then like right as you raise your voice and you say something, all the sound dies and you're the loudest thing in the room. Like that's what happened to Rand right there. And sometimes you can say some pretty embarrassing things in those situations. But anyway, but Rand says that.
Luckily, all he said was the word later.
Right. Which Pot and Fane, I don't think he misconstrued it. I think he just played off of it. Basically said, no, I'm not going to wait later. Yeah, he's like, I'm not going to wait later. This news needs to come out now. And he starts telling everyone about the woes in Gildan and this false dragon and just being real dramatic. Well, his drama got him a one-way ticket to get interrogated by the village council, which I don't know if that should be intimidating. Maybe with Bran Alvear and Tam Althor asking the question. Oh, and Harold Luhan. So, yeah, I guess it is pretty intimidating.
I don't know. Nynaeve seems like the most intimidating person in that crowd.
Right, but going into it, Pot and Fane didn't even see Nynaeve. So that's a surprise he gets on the back end, is Nynaeve showing up to the meeting. But I'm talking about these men coming out and basically, essentially grabbing Pot and Fane after he starts telling all these things and saying, you're coming with us and you're going to tell us what you know. So in any way.
Well, Pot and Fane doesn't act like he's going to be interrogated. He's like, yeah, I could use a hot drink, and it just goes with him. He's totally happy doing it.
But you know what I think, though, honestly? I think it's still part of his dramatic air. Like, I think kind of on the inside, Pot and Fane was probably a little put off, like in a little like, oh no,
maybe.
But he's obviously a good actor, and he's obviously a good orator, I guess you could say, because he's got the crowd's attention. Which in the Two Rivers,
he's got charisma.
Right, but in the Two Rivers, you could stand up and say, "I have news of the outside world," and say it monotone, and people will probably flock to you. But his embellishment just increases that, just kind of puts the town, I don't want to say under his spell necessarily, but they're into it. They're buying what he's selling, and I don't mean his goods, I mean his information. And
yeah.
So to me, he's kind of an enigmatic character, and it makes me wonder at this stage of the game here, did he do this in all the small towns and have as much success as he did in the large cities? Because I don't think he would have had as much success doing this in larger cities as he does in small towns for the reason I just stated, which is large cities and towns, they're getting news all the time. They'll talk to a peddler, but this guy is literally the only serious link outside of the Two Rivers any of these people have, because they literally stay right there. And of course they don't have cell phones.
Nobody ever leaves.
Right. No one really ever leaves. Everything they need is off of the farms and the land. And there's some merchants that come through from time to time to bring some other goods, and they might get a snippet of news there, but they really put a...
Yeah, I think specific things that were mentioned that people buy from peddlers is like pins. Because I think one of the Coplins or Conger.
It was
there we go. I was like, it was a Coplin or a Conger needed pins. And probably things like pots and pans. Stuff and books. But generally stuff that they wouldn't be able to get unless they went outside or unless somebody brought it in.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things, or a couple of things really, that you notice as you get a better feel for Emmons Field is not necessarily what they have, but what they don't have. If you're thinking on like in the terms of like amenities, so there's no bookstore. The most books you see are the ones that Bran Alvear keeps in the inn, which are for everyone who's in the common room to read. But they're not for sale, and he's not giving them away. He's not making money off of the books. They're just there for guests. So there's not a bookstore there. There's not, unless Master Luhan's making some pots and pans, and I don't know if he was or not. It's never stated, at least that I can remember.
I think it's mentioned that whenever the peddlers bring books, that they have to be like split between everybody who wants them.
Right. And that's kind of the thing, is even with the peddler showing up with his wares, there's only so much to go around. So I want to say that the town is definitely there for the news, but a lot of them are there for the stuff too. So, and another example of that is when they're taking Fane into the inn. That's when we find out what Whit Conger's there to buy, because he calls out, "Hey, you can't." He basically says, "Hey, you can't take them. My wife sent me here to buy pens." And of course, we saw Days Conger just basically handle him all up and over the place in chapter 1. So he's there and is scared that he's not going to get what his wife sent him for, and is going to get basically lambasted for it. So, but it's interesting though. I like this chapter for the fact that we meet some people. We meet Perrin, we meet Nynaeve and Egwene. We technically meet the Gleeman, whose name I'll wait to reveal until next episode. Not that most people listening don't already know it.
It might be you.
What's that?
It might be you.
Might be. But then we've got some other things that are mentioned first off too in this chapter. So there is a lot that can be unpacked from this chapter. But I think the main thing with me is just seeing how the small town life and people gravitate to world news, because for two reasons. One, they never hear it, and two, it's way more dramatic than anything that goes on in their little sphere of influence. It's very much, what's the biggest thing that's happened around here? Well, the winter ain't let up. That's it. Some wolves killed some sheep. Yeah. That's it. Which that's a big deal. And even I think let me see if I can find that quote real quick. But even Sam Bowie brings that up, that what's bigger than these things, because he's the quintessential old man in the small town. That is,
I kind of understand why he's on the village council though, because he's that voice of, what's a war got to do with us? We've got to worry about.
We've got our own problems.
What's happening here,
right? And he's very much the voice of, Emmons Fielders first, Two Rivers first. We don't care about the rest of you guys. We just want to do with with that. And actually, I found it.
He's a little bit of a naysayer, but reasonably so. Like, he complains about the fireworks and the Gleeman, but it's not about them existing. It's about the money. He's like, we shouldn't be spending money on this stuff.
But actually, I want to read this real quick, and we can kind of use this to kind of tie off discussion on this chapter, because it's actually the beginning of Fane's telling of the news. He says, "You're thinking you've had troubles in the Two Rivers, are you? Well, all the world has troubles, from the great blight south to the sea of storms, from the Aerith Ocean in the west to the Aiel Waste in the east, and even beyond. The winter was harsher than you've ever seen before, cold enough to gel your blood and crack your bones. Winter was cold and harsh everywhere. In the borderlands, they'd be calling your winter spring. But spring has not come, you say. Wolves have killed your sheep? Perhaps wolves have attacked men? Is that the way of it? Well now, spring is laid everywhere. There are wolves everywhere, all hungry for any flesh they can sink a tooth into, be it sheep or cow or man. But there are things worse than wolves or winter, and there are those who would be glad to have only your little troubles." To which Sim Bowie calls out and says, "What could be worse than wolves killing sheep and men?" And pretty much everything I've been kind of pulling out of this chapter is literally in that paragraph and that response. Because Fane, because he's not telling he's told no news. He told no news in that. That was all embellishment. It was basically him saying, I come from a much grander world where things are actually better / worse. It's bigger and it's worse. And kind of minimizing their problems to build this grand narrative to sell to them. And then Sim Bowie tries to poke a hole in it like Sim Bowie does. And he says, well, what could be worse than wolves killing sheep and men? Because that is the Two Rivers concern, is wolves, crops, long winter.
Yeah.
And then I have to hand it to the Peddler. This was quite a good response. Fane's response is men killing men. And then he actually starts telling of things that are actually happening. And I have to give it to you. This dude's a master orator. I mean, it's a very good read. It's a very good part to read. And Fane is a very I think even here we see that Pontiphane is a little bit of a complex character, at least more complex than a lot of the ones that we've met so far in the book.
Yeah.
So I think that's really all I've got time to kind of go over with chapter 3 here. So yeah,
Alrighty.
so go
So
ahead. Go ahead, set us up, Thorne.
I'm supposed to set it up. Okay, so this week for our Twitter of Time segment,
Mhm.
we are going to point out a very small page. It has 54 followers.
Got 14
It's
tweets.
WOT phrasing.
So, for context, if you've never seen the show Archer, two things. One, shame on you. Go watch it. Two, this is hilarious. And this is a joke that got started on Archer where you say something that can be misconstrued as perverted and you say phrasing to call attention to how you phrase things. What this account does, Watt Phrasing, at Watt Phrasing, WOT Phrasing, is it takes quotes lifted straight out of the books with the reference to what book and what chapter and basically puts phrasing behind it and kind of makes it into, well, perverted jokes. So it has 14 tweets so far, and we are going to read all 14 of them. So
I think we should take
I was
turns
about
on
to
this
say, do
one.
you want to start or shall I?
You can go ahead and do the first one.
Oh, God. Okay. And yes, we've already read these. I don't know if that's a bad or a good thing. So, first tweet says, Nynaeve's thoughts. She drew a shuddering breath. Wait.
Oh, wait. Oh, you're
I'm
doing
going down to the bottom, going to the top.
You're doing
Yeah, I'm doing old to new because, yeah, just because, yeah. So, starting with their first tweet, is saying that this is thoughts that Nynaeve is having. It says, she drew a shuddering breath. She expected him to comment on how easily he had come on her unaware. Phrasing. And that is from Eye of the World, chapter 37, The Long Chase.
Okay,
Next.
The next one is a serving maid, the one who had been polishing candlesticks when they came in, showed them up to the attic room. That's from the Eye of the World, chapter 36, Web of the Pattern.
Now, wait a minute, Thorne. Okay, so we talked about the long list of things that Thorne has not interacted with, and Archer is one of them. You gotta.
Actually, I have seen Archer.
I thought you told me you hadn't seen Archer. Why do you lie to me?
I might have lied to you. I don't remember lying to you, but I might have.
We're going to assume you haven't, because if you had, you would know.
I haven't seen all of it. I've seen parts of it, though.
Well, this comes up a lot. Hence the various memes and scenes that are actually attached to these tweets, which is basically different.
Go to the next one.
I am going to the next one, but I'm trying to explain. When you get through reading it, you need to say phrasing. That's how the joke goes. So I'll demonstrate again.
I don't get jokes.
I get jokes, people. You get jokes. Otherwise, I wouldn't be reading this. Okay, so next one says, almost holding her breath, she got down on her stomach and crawled upwind toward the smell. Phrasing. Man, wow. I don't think I actually read that one. Oh, man. Okay, read the next one.
Parents' thoughts. He did not ride often at home, but when he did, it was more likely bareback than not.
Phrasing, boom. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, next one. Come on, Rand said. We'll go up the back way. Phrasing. And that's from Eye of the World, chapter 41, Old Friends and New Threats.
I'd stopped reading that part. If they want to know where it's exactly from, they can go to the page.
Fine. Okay.
Okay, so it's my turn.
Yes.
Hesitantly, Rand poked his lantern at the waygate.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Okay. He wore a bright yellow cloak edged in red over his armor with the black hawk on the breast. Phrasing.
I don't get that one.
I'm going to be 100% honest. I'm not sure if I'm with that one either.
I think it might be because it says breast. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, what phrasing, if you want to tweet us and tell
Explain
us.
jokes to Thorne.
Yes, hashtag explain jokes to Thorne. There it is. I've created our first new hashtag. There we go. Explain jokes to Thorne. So next one is yours.
My turn.
Yeah.
Agenor says, I, who threw up my might against the Lord of the Morning and met him stroke for stroke.
Phrasing.
Oh, baby.
Oh, God. I can't even. Okay. All right. This is Baalzamon, and he says, one dark friend to face you where 100 could come on you asleep. Oh, God.
Kinky.
Oh, so much phrasing. All right, you get the last one.
Okay. Loyal muttered to himself as he set up the warder's tiny stove, but his thick fingers moved deftly.
Yeah, they did. Phrasing. So, guys, if you're looking for a good laugh, were you saying something, Thorne?
Oh, I was gonna say. I assume that you're gonna say the @
Yeah. No, I'm gonna. So plugging the account here. So if you guys are looking for a pretty good laugh, Watt Phrasing, go give them a follow. They've only got 53 followers. Go
54.
It's showing 53 on mine. I guess I need to refresh.
Oh, I just followed them.
Oh, well. So there you go.
A little while ago.
So please, Watt Phrasing, explain jokes to Thorne. Please help me here. So
hashtag explain jokes to Thorne.
Quality account, and that is our Twitter of Time segment. So if all our Twitter of Time friends don't know about these guys, or this account, Watt Phrasing, go follow it. Go follow it. It's I'll accept that one tweet. It's Class A stuff. So, but segueing off of that and just kind of getting to where we're wrapping everything up tonight.
I'm so excited.
I promised at the beginning of the show a very special announcement, and I am privileged to announce that we will be having our first guest come on episode 5, and that will be our first topical discussion. So will be spoiler filled, more than likely, because when we have guests on, we don't want to have really any limits on what we talk about. So people who haven't read everything yet, I sincerely apologize. But the other episodes, most of the episodes are for you guys. We have to do it, but we do these topical ones for the ones who have read through the books. But more so than being excited for doing our first topical episode in 2 episodes is who the guest is. And the guest is none other than Daniel Green. Yes, Daniel Green of YouTube. He used to call himself a booktuber. Now he really wants to be known more as a content creator. He is a massive Wheel of Time fan. A lot of people, I think, in the Twitter of Time community especially, have seen his videos dissecting the books, reviewing the books. He does more than Wheel of Time, but Wheel of Time is like his main thing. He would tell you that it's his all-time favorite, and you can tell by the way he talks about it. But if you guys are looking for good fantasy content, as far as he does segments on fantasy news where he talks about adaptations and upcoming books and things of that nature. He does book reviews, not just on Wheel of Time, but he's reviewed ones I watched. I know he's reviewed Dresden Files. He's actually reviewed several books that I went out and bought, haven't read yet, but several of his recommendations I've taken. So he's a great content creator. He recently hit 30,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Yay.
That's a big deal, especially when he's pushing Wheel of Time like nobody's business. He usually has, I think he's kind of come away from calling them Watt Talk, but basically he does specific videos on different Wheel of Time things. He has analyzed battles. He has analyzed characters. He's even done author deep dives on Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson and other fantasy writers, of course, but he's done a lot of stuff on Wheel of Time. And Daniel, if you hear this and I've misrepresented you in any way, I apologize. I'm just rattling stuff I know about you off the top of my head. But I have been in contact with Mr. Green, and we have lined our schedules up, and he has agreed to come on the podcast, and that's on episode 5, so it's a couple of weeks away. Mark your calendars. Get your podcast catcher ready to download this sucker, because it's going to be a great one. So we hope you catch it and do not miss it, because if you do, we'll be sad, and I won't want to talk to you anymore. So there's the big announcement. We're going to try to have guests on kind of regularly, as in every time we do a topical discussion, we're going to try to do one every about fifth episode. We're going to try to have a different guest on if we're successful.
It really depends on, it depends on whether
they're free.
Other people who's free.
Right. If not, then we'll just do the topic and move on. But we are going to try our best to at least line up a guest before we decide not to. It just depends. But we really do want to have guests on because, guys, there's so much good content, both podcasts, YouTube, whatever you like, surrounding Twitter of Time and Wheel of Time, especially with the announcement that they're doing the TV show. So we're just trying to network and give shout outs to those that came before us, those that come behind us, and those who are doing this with us. We just kind of want to present this to you guys because at the end of the day, we're all part of one big community and we need to kind of do stuff as a community. So that's why we enjoy having guests on from various corners of the Twitter of time. So, yes, Twitterverse. There you go. TOT. So anyway, but the last thing we want to do tonight, and Thorne gets the privilege of doing this, is we didn't do it on the show last week, but we're going to do it on the show from now on, is we're going to decide which chapters Greg and Thorne get to prep on and which ones we get to lead the discussion on like we did this episode. And Thorne is going to roll a die. Which die are you rolling?
I'm rolling a D20.
You're rolling a D20. Yes, we're D&D nerds. Get off our back. Or join our campaign, one of the two.
We have a campaign together?
Campaigns, sorry. I'm in one, she's in one. We don't live anywhere near each other, so we can't be. Well, I guess we could technically, but we're not in the same campaign. But we both play D&D, avid D&D players. I think we're both DMs, aren't we?
I've done one DMing session.
And my campaign's on hiatus right now. I'm letting some of my friends take their turn. But in any case...
Yeah, we're kind of on hiatus, too, because I recently moved.
Right. So are we doing high-low or odds-even?
Just pick whatever one you want.
Let's do high-low. And I'm going to go low.
You win.
Ha ha! I win. You won last week, so it's only fitting. So let me see. So the next two chapters are
The Gleeman and Winter Night.
That is hard. That's a hard choice. Winter Night. I want Winter Night.
Damn it.
I want Winter Night. I'm sorry. I love that chapter so much. And everyone who tunes in next week will see why. Oh, come on. The Gleeman's a great chapter, and you know it.
It's an okay chapter.
Whatever. It's better than the Peddler.
Good point.
I mean, everyone gets to meet. I'm going to pretend that I said it, and you bleeped it out because we don't have those sound effects. Anyway, guys, so where's what with like just like beep like that?
Yeah, I'm sure that they have them on Audacity or something.
Huh.
Anyways, since I got us thoroughly distracted.
Yes, it's all Thorne's fault. But don't forget to follow us on the social medias. You can find us on Twitter at OnePowerPod. You can also find our Facebook page, One Power Podcast, if you're on Facebook. I know we do a lot of interactions on Twitter, but I know we do have fans that do Facebook. So go like our page on Facebook. You can also...
We're more interactive on Twitter, but
we
will post when our videos come up on Facebook at the least.
And we check everything. So if you're more active on Facebook, come on to the page. If you're more active on Twitter like we are, come find us there. Also, we have an email, onepowerpod@gmail.com. You can send us any inquiries, anything you like to us that way if you want to try to reach out to us. And
Thorne reads all the emails.
Thorne does read all the emails. I get alerts all the time. Hey, are you signing? Google saying, hey, are you signing in from this area? And I'm like, no, it's Thorne. It's just Thorne. So
it's me.
In any case, that's how you can find us. So we are going to gear up next week to get into the next two chapters. And, of course, hype Mr. Daniel Green a little bit more because I'm super excited for that episode. But until next time, just remember that the wheel weaves as the wheel wills. And I'm Greg.
And I'm Thorne.
And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.